Good morning, good afternoon. I better say good evening because Arno's in Australia and God knows what time it is over there. Welcome aboard, everybody. What day is it? Still the same day as this morning, Tuesday, 22nd of October. And let's get it started. There he is. Thank God for that. Right, do not request anything, Arno. I'm sending you an invite. Just accept the invite. You don't have to keep WhatsApping me and telling me what your situation is. I can see you. Come on down. Dun 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 dun. Hello, you there? Accept the invite, mate. It's really not hard. Yeah, come on. I can hear you. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. Right,
Fantastic.
let me just get some legals out the way. Let me just quickly tell everyone it is live because that would help. Bum, 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 and it's live. Let me then quickly do the legals. Let me find one so I can actually read the legals. So I can't memorize them. My brain is absolute mashed potato at the moment. Nothing discussed on this Spaces session. Nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitutes trading or investment advice, or infers any kind of endorsement by PiQ Global Limited, Trainers PiQ or PiQSuite, or its affiliates, including the hosts, which is obviously Arno Venter from CapitalEdge and myself, Ryan Paisley from PiQ, as usual. So Arno.
Yep.
This is our Quickfire Blast, which for those that aren't aware, it's come under a couple of different names so far, but the gist is that Arno and myself, obviously everyone loves the little short fire, quick fire things that we did, myself and Mr. Brown do, the morning rambles, the morning blasts.
Yeah.
So nice and short, and also the Friday fix with the Alpha Picks guys. So the ones with Arno are going to be more ad hoc, well, they are more ad hoc, little previews, reviews, anything that Arno thinks we should talk about, trying to do at least a couple of these a week with myself and Arno. And also one of our other PIQ guys, Jamie, not ex-analyst, sorry, an analyst, used to be ex-floor guy, as in the live floor, old-fashioned trading. So loads of stuff to really talk about over in the coming weeks and months ahead. But this one, before we go too off the edge, is about BOE's Bailey, which is talking
Yeah.
later on, right? So,
Yeah.
so just to set the scene, this is Bank of England Governor Bailey. He's doing a keynote address at the Bloomberg Global Regulatory Forum, which to me sounds boring as. Michael Brown completely slated this earlier on when I told him in the blast that we were doing this in the morning blast. He said, "Well, he's not going to say anything very interesting." I hope he was talking to Bailey and not you. But you seem to think it's you made some good points in your tweets this morning in the old Capital Edge corner, which
Yeah.
was he doesn't talk very often, which is true, which
Yeah.
some people are grateful for. So this is his chance maybe to drop a few hints and just give us a bit of colour, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
go on,
So
you go ahead. I'm going to just ping up your tweets from the Capital Edge corner up onto the
fantastic.
Jumbotron.
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point and to Michael's point as well, we do run the risk that he just says absolutely nothing about monetary policy, right? That's always the risk. Like we were super excited about Powell and about Williams a couple of sessions ago, and he just said nothing about monetary policy. That's always the risk. The first speech for today from Bailey is actually about, he's talking about, let me just quickly double check. It's not specifically about monetary policy. He'll be out talking, let me just quickly find that. Basically a regulation speech, but obviously because it's keynote, there's a risk that he opens up with his view on monetary policy, and we also have him up a little bit later in the week. The reason why it's potentially going to be interesting, firstly, is because we don't hear from him as often as the rest, right? From the others, it feels like we have speeches from the ECB and the Fed literally almost every single day. We hear from them a lot, so we're not really surprised by what they have to say because we hear from them a lot. When it comes to Bailey, we don't hear from him as frequently. And if you just go back to what he said back at the start of October, this is why I think today's speeches or this week's speeches could be more interesting, because at the start of October, he got markets, all hot and bothered about what he said, saying that they could become a little bit more activist in terms of rate cuts if they get more good news about inflation. Now, the markets obviously took those comments to mean that, yeah, we are open to, expediting our cutting cycle or easing cycle if we get more good news about inflation. In that session alone, I mean, we saw a 6B or CME pound futures drop 1% on the session, and it's 2% lower from that comments. So
shameless plug, and shameless plug. So yeah, so 6B futures on CME. Also, they do micros, don't they, as well?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I mean, for those who likes to trade the crosses, they do, Euro sterling cross as well. We've got a couple of cross futures as well, which is fantastic.
We love CME, basically. We love CME.
Yeah, so really big moves in terms of, since he spoke, which is just a couple, 2 weeks ago at the start of October. Now, the reason why that's interesting is last week we had CPI, and CPI decelerated faster than what markets had anticipated. But if you take a look at, apart from that, it wasn't a monster miss. But what we did see was all three key measures, headline, core, as well as services, which Pearl has been on about, as we know, for the last couple of months, decelerate to new cycle lows. All of them moved in the same direction for a change. In my opinion, what we saw from CPI last week was more good news on inflation. So the big question is, if Governor Bailey said that they would look to potentially cut a little bit faster, ease a little bit faster just 2 weeks ago, if they got more good news, does he think last week's good news is good enough for them to cut faster? That's what we're potentially looking for in his commentary today. Again, there's all the risks that, what he says, he doesn't say anything about monetary policy, but we want to be prepared in case he does to take advantage of it.
So to be honest, I think, the fact, Michael Brown kind of said this morning, slightly tongue in cheek, admittedly, Bailey, he's not going to say anything today, it's going to be boy. But the fact is, many people do believe that, right? Because it is, so it's when the market isn't prepared for someone to start talking about markets, and they do, that's when you see the exaggerated moves, because obviously it takes everyone, off guard.
Exactly.
So, if anything, it's more important on times like this to look at the the tweets that we put in the CapitalEdge corner this morning that are up in the Jumbotron, where it shows like the potential moves, the potential way the markets are looking and stuff, because it could catch a few people out. It's going to be, and it's that awful time for markets as well, 5 minutes before the US cash stock open. So there's the people are going to be like, eyes are going to be all over the screens. It's not like, sometimes if it's in the morning or in the afternoon, you only have 2 or 3 markers you have to keep an eye on. But there's going to be a lot of traders out there that are going to trying to keep one eye open on the futures as we come into the cash open for the stocks. We have a few like looking at the bond markets. We have a few, oil starts ticking, more volume comes into oil at that sort of time as well. So it could, if he says something and if he drops a clanger, we could get some decent moves on this.
I think so. I mean, the other reason why I think it's interesting looking at it is if he just comes out and he says nothing interesting, fine, as you were. But if you look at where sterling has been trading over the course of the last, let's just call it, 10 weeks, we're basically very close to where we were back at that August highs. If you look at the pound at an index level, we're basically very similar to levels that we were back before we had that huge risk-off scare in sterling. Which basically, saw a huge amount of downside, but sterling bounced back quite aggressively. We've even bounced back to, at least looking at it at the cross level, to levels similar to where we had pre-Governor Bailey comments back in at the start of October, apart from versus the US dollar. And at the same time, you have your City Economic Surprise Index showing us the data in aggregate, not sugarcoat, not handpicking select ones here and there. In aggregate, the data has been weaker than expected, or has been surprising to the downside. And if you look at positioning, the markets are still very comfortable sitting on a pretty stretched position on the long side for sterling. So I think risk reward in a week like this, where you've got very little else for the markets to think about, everybody is cautious and trading carefully going into the election, obviously. In a week like this, if you do get a whopper of a surprise with the markets so stretched on the long side, that can be really sexy from a short-term point of view. But you want to be ready for it, right? You want to wait for it. Yeah. If you do get that trigger, you know what you need to look for. You know where you need to execute. You're ready for it. You don't want to be sitting there, trying to get in. Once that initial move has happened, you kind of want to be getting out when the race is getting in, if that makes sense, on a move like that, because you don't want to hang around too much.
Yeah.
Having said that, there's a couple of cross futures pairs that are looking pretty interesting. I hate to say it, but euro sterling on the long side could be interesting at these low levels. If he
Get
does
out of it. Get out
shift
of it.
a little
This
bit.
is if I'm on the podcast, we have to be bullish sterling. You know the rules. I don't make the rules. Well, okay, that's a lie. I do absolutely make the rules.
And then obviously, 6p or pound dollar, definitely one to look at. It is looking a little bit stretched at these levels, I would say, but we're sitting right on top of that 130 level. And if we were to get a nice little nudge, that might be everything we need to just see that finally crack below it and push lower. The other one that I think could be interesting going into the Bank of Canada is pound CAD. I love to hate the CAD right now from a fundamental point of view. Absolutely love it. But I do think there's a potential risk. We'll talk about this tomorrow, but I do think there's a potential risk about the BOC maybe surprising the markets. If it's not a 25, the surprise could potentially be just a subtle language shift. If you consider that if they do go 50, they're down to basically 375 already. And the recent data, in my opinion, just doesn't, it's not crisis environment. There was a really good note out from Scotia over the weekend where they noted that if you go back over the last, in this century, there hasn't ever been a 50 basis point cut from the BOC outside a crisis environment. Well, so you have to ask yourself, do we think?
To be honest, though, that is pretty much a water is wet comment, right? You don't do 50 basis point cuts unless there is a crisis.
Exactly. So, and I just don't think there is one. If you look at the data, I think.
Yeah, my concern here, though, mate, is the fact that until about 10 seconds after the Fed cut 50, I was still sure they weren't cutting 50.
I know exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
I think what it comes down to is that with the markets already priced for a 50, pretty much there. I mean, we are less than a basis point away from pricing 50 at money markets. It probably means that if they do go 25, we know it's going to be a huge surprise. But even if they don't, there's so much bad news already priced. I'm not sure whether that really gives the CAD bears what they want. So that could be interesting. It's not a high probability one. I think they probably go 50. I think the markets are allowing them to, which probably means they will go for it, just like the Fed. But the question is, if they do go 50, do they really have to go that much more? Because that already puts them at 375 if they go 50, which probably doesn't leave a lot more for them to go to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting from a more mean reversion play. But like I said, I do love to hate the CAD right now. It's just the currency that fundamentally it hasn't been great. But I think
if
the market might be saturated on that view right now a little bit.
The loonie, as everyone, the older boys will know it called the loonie, but it's just such an unpopular trade. Like there's people that basically only trade that, and I've never understood it. It's like, how boring is your life that you're going to sit there and trade the loonie full time?
Yeah, full time is a I mean, that's going to be incredibly boring. Here and there we get opportunities with it, but it needs to be really good. It needs to be really, really worth it to take the time to go into it.
Yeah.
But that could be interesting.
6C on CME, by the way, 6C.
Yeah. So that could be interesting, from a pound point of view. If we get, a dovish trigger, maybe there could be some opportunities to look for a cheeky short and something like pound CAD. But again, we would need to have Governor Bailey laying it down pretty thick in terms of dovish. I don't want any, in a week like this where the markets have been trading so messy so far, you don't want to be getting in on something that sounds a little bit dovish. You want to be getting in on that trigger where he says, we're probably going to expedite easy. Then you want to, okay, that's my trigger. That's what I'm looking for. If it's just like, saying the same thing or sounds a little bit more dovish, that's not going to be enough. He needs to make his position.
Well, this cuts straight to the bone to kind of what we say on pretty much every show, right? With you, it's something that you do incredibly well, and it's kind of what you've built your business around. Is the whole philosophy, trading philosophy, but one of the hardest philosophies to kind of undertake as a trader is you do nothing, absolutely nothing, until there is a clear opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is one of the hardest things to do in the world. It takes an incredible amount of discipline that
Yeah.
very, very few people are trading have. You know, you could go as far as to say that, you know, if you can nail that bit of aspect of trading, you'll make money, right? Yeah, you might not set the world on fire, but if you can master discipline, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can guarantee I can get it so you are profitable. Um, because it's, you know, trading is like 99% discipline, in my opinion.
100% that. I mean, if you
No,
the thing,
99%.
yeah. 100% that it's 99%.
All right, right.
Exactly that. I mean, the thing is, you can, just by doing that very simple shift in your thinking, especially with regards to risk events, is that you just cancel out so many unnecessary losses. That's really all that we're trying to do. Is you're trying to give yourself a little bit of an edge, a little bit better edge, but you have to wait for it. You have to wait
Yeah,
for it. If you're going to just go in, out of the hip, then you might as well just put it all on red or black.
yeah, exactly that, exactly that.
Your odds might be better at the casino, even.
Yeah, yeah, or Rising Sun, racing in the 420 at Chepstow.
Yeah,
If
I
there is a
mean,
horse, if there, I've not looked. If there is a horse called Rising Sun in the 420 at Chepstow, I'm putting everything on it because
not investment advice.
no, not investment advice, not investment advice, gambling advice.
Yeah, but I mean, that's it for Bailey. I think that's the clear shift. If we get one, that can be interesting in a week like this, because, like you said, there's nobody is looking at it right now. It's not a focus for the markets. If he does lay it on thick, I think that could potentially open up a really good trade, similar to what we had at the start of October. But you would need to make that point pretty clear.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect, awesome. Well, should we leave it there? Nice little
Yeah,
short, quick fire blast.
yep,
Brilliant. And we're doing the CAD preview tomorrow, right?
yeah,
POC
yeah.
preview tomorrow. Awesome. Well, Arno, thank you very much. Listeners, thank you very much. I hope that it's given you some insight, or if anything, just giving you something to listen to whilst you're having a turnout. You know, whatever you want to do, however you want to listen to these things. But anyway, we will leave you to it. If you are trading today, as always, keep it tight. And me and Arno will see you tomorrow. Take care.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
buddy.
Cheers, cheers.
Bye. 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 Bye.